Hello, welcome to Rise of Nations. If you're watching this, you're probably pretty new to this game that is kind of hard to understand. The learning curve is pretty high, but it's not too hard to learn, and I'll be giving you a competent tutorial going from the basics to army composition to invasions to navy composition and all that good stuff. So just keep watching. The first thing we will be going over is well, this menu here. This menu is going to be what shows up for you, and you're going to be able to pick a country. Now, you want to pick a country that's strong but is not prone to conflict. I would avoid countries like Germany, France, the UK, Turkey, and Japan, Brazil. For countries like that, avoid those countries if you're just starting out. If you had the ropes of the game and you want to start just training your skills, I would recommend one of those countries. But you want to stick with countries like Nigeria, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, maybe stuff like that. And Indonesia is a really good one too for starter people because they're strong and they are not very prone to conflict. South Africa is extremely good for new players. I'd say this is one of the best countries actually, but it's really up to you which one of those countries you really want to play as. You don't have to play one of those countries, but they're the best for starter players. So once you have decided what country you want to play as, you're going to scroll to which country you want to pick. Let's see, what do I want to pick? I'm going to be Nigeria. That's a really good one for starter players. You don't have to pick Nigeria, but this is what's going to show up. You're going to get, it's going to make your country white with red cities. This is what your country's color will always be when you select one. You're not going to have this much money at the start of the game because this is an old server, but that's what you're going to start with. This is what the map will look like. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like a modern day 2020, 2019. That's what it's going to look like. Some things like Kosovo do not exist, but it's pretty accurate map. So here's what you're going to learn next. You're going to want to learn how to declare war on a country. So you see, select one of their cities. You just left click any city. You can select cities with troops. You press shift and then click it. You have to press shift though. Or you can do this, but it's slower and more time consuming. I just press shift. That's what most people do. So press shift, click. So you've selected this country. Pretty easy, right? So now you have to justify war. Justify war, conquest, justify war goal. Now, the reason you can't directly just click, also make sure you click the city, click the flag. You cannot directly declare war because you don't have the caucus belli yet. So you have to do that first. Now, to have to move troops, you just click them and send them to where you want them to go. As you can see, that's what I'm going to do. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. That's how you move the units. So now, see, there's a lot of map modes. Let's just look at the map modes for now. So diplomatic shows you your allies, who you're allied with, and your country. Allies will be shown in blue. If you're in a faction, it'll show your allies as yellow, and it'll always show your country as green. Terrain. This is very important. If you're in terrain and entrenched, you have defensive positions. They help your defense. They also make your troops much slower. Biomes are seasonal. It's November, so Russia is in a mild winter right now. And the Arctic will always stay as the Arctic. As you see it hit December, boom, severe winter, and mild winter all across Europe. So keep that in mind. Biomes will increase attrition and sometimes give you entrenchment bonuses. Jungles are really good for that. Okay. So now that I've gone over all that, we're about to have our, let's go over a few more things. Ideologies, we'll go over that later. Factions, we'll also go over that later. And resources, we'll go over that later. So, as you see, once your justification is ready, which it should tell you if you hit this arrow right here, it'll show you when it's going to be ready. Now that we have the justification, it'll pop up on your screen when you hit the justification. You hit declare war, conquest, declare war. And this will start war. Now, war can be very damaging to your country, so if you're in a large war, keep that in mind. But here's how we're going to fight an AI. This is an AI. AI is very stupid. Don't be scared of fighting an AI. So you just move your troops to one of their cities. I'm going to move it to Parkaroo. I don't know how to pronounce this. I've never been to Benin. And I don't know how to pronounce his name. So we're just going to go to the city. Your troops will be sent to the city, and they will capture it. Speed depends on how many troops you have. I turned off auto merge, so they don't merge. If you turn off auto merge, it will keep them separate. If you hit merge, as you can see, it'll merge them together. It's up to you if you want to do that or not. And they're entrenched, so they get defensive bonus, and they easily win. Their entrenchment bonus is high because this is a jungle. Next, we're gonna hit. Now you have a choice. You can split these into. If you're auto-capturing AI and it's a weak nation, I recommend around 50,000 troops in each division. If it's a strong nation, I recommend, and you're auto-capturing a strong nation with a lot of units, I recommend 120,000. I've made 50,000, 60,000. You're gonna hit auto-capture, and then you're gonna hit the country right here, which is Benin, because we're at war Benin. And your troops will automatically capture the cities without your manual aid. Now, if you want this invasion to be faster, you can direct them yourselves. They're all going to the same city, so I'm just going to redirect them to different cities, so it's faster. As you can see, we're redirecting to different cities, so now it'll be much faster. So yeah. Now we just need to capture this country. Very small country. You almost always will justify conquest on a country if you want to declare war on it. Subjugate puppets the country. This can be useful. Puppets should get a rework in this game eventually. Right now they're kind of bare, but if it's a player, they will be useful. If it's an AI, do not puppet them. Liberation liberates all the countries. So if Germany's taken over all Europe and I liberate them, it's just going to be Germany again. So keep that in mind. So next we're going to just invade the entirety of this country. As you can see, very quick invasion. There's only a few cities left, and it'll be over. So let us just do that real quick. Meanwhile, I'm going to show you another thing. Development. Development is very important for increasing your economy, which is shown right here. Left-click the flag. Boom, here it comes up. If you want to develop cities, you just click one the city you want to develop. Buildings, develop. Depending on how big the city is and how developed it already is, it'll cost more or less. So that's also very important and useful to keep in mind. Always develop your cities. Unless you don't have enough money for it, then don't do it. So now we just need to conquer this nation. It's almost gone. As you see, I declare war on Benin. Now, here's the very important part, actually. It'll say the country's collapsed. If you want to annex a country, which I'm going to do, you click the flag in the corner right here. It'll almost always be right here. It will actually, no, it will always be there. Okay, you hit negotiate terms, and it shows this menu pops up. Make sure you hit annex, demand, and seize. If you have subjugate, you'll hit make puppet state, and if you've done liberation, you'll liberate all countries. But this is a conquest war, so we're going to do all three of these. We're going to send the terms. It'll say, are you sure? You click again, yes, and now the country is a part of you. So you've successfully taken over your first country. Pretty good job, unless you've already taken over a country before, and therefore you've just wasted your time. I didn't have to say that. So let's go over another thing. Rankings. This just shows how strong each country is. The U.S. is the most powerful country. On number 11. It goes all the way up to 211 to 212. I just killed the country, so the 212. So there you go. That's how you declare war. That's a basic overview of the game. We're gonna get into more advanced stuff soon, but for now, that's very much a basic understanding of the game. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna be talking about is mechanics. Mechanics to this game. There's a lot of mechanics you have to take in and stuff. One of the most important ones, though, is stability. Stability. If your stability is low, you'll get bad events. You will collapse, and countries will declare independence from you. This is one of the most important things. Now, maybe wondering how to keep this high. Well, you go to the economic laws, and government spending helps. You can also research it right here, add stability, and consumer goods also help. Consumer goods give you a 25% stability increase when you meet the expectations. And the expectation for Nigeria is negative 40.15. Certain countries require more, certain countries require less. It really just depends on what country you are. Smaller countries need less, bigger countries need more. It really depends on your population. So there you go. War exhaustion is mostly based on casualties. If you take lots of casualties, you'll get high war exhaustion, which will lead to low stability and your eventual collapse. You also get bad events, and it can really mess up your game. If you want to decrease this, you can also use government spending. Communism gets rid of it too. Socialism. None of the other ideologies though do. So, yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, next is resources. Resources are a number of mechanics that are in the game. They're very important. Oil lets you run tanks, aircraft, ships, and all that stuff. Titanium, iron, aluminum, chromium, and most of these other resources, all these other resources, gold, pretty much gold, copper. They let you produce certain things like steel, motor factories, fertilizer, electronics, aircraft factories. You need these factories to make tanks. You need these to make electronics, which create sonar stations and make you a lot of money. And you need these to make aircraft too. I generally recommend putting these in bigger cities because the bigger the city is, the more income you'll get from the factory, the more resource income. We'll talk about trade income right now, actually. So, see, I'm going to make an electronic factory. I'm going to buy the requirements for an electronic factory, which are actually 2 gold and 2 copper. So we're going to buy 2 copper from Chile and 2 gold from Zimbabwe. And now I have to wait for this to be built. It might take longer or shorter depending on just how long this takes. I'm not 100% sure. It should. You can get research building speed if you want to speed it up. Also, stability will affect your tax income, your manpower increase, and your unrest reduction. All very important. So obviously, if I want to increase my stability, I can go low government spending, and this should turn green. If it doesn't, then it should turn green though. Well, I can make it medium, and it should turn green. So yeah, it turned green. So it turns green when your stability is going up, and it's orange if it's just not changing, and it's red if it's going down. So that's useful to keep in mind. My war exhaustion is 0 because I'm not at war. I'm not taking any casualties. If you're at war, your war exhaustion goes down even more slowly. So keep that in mind. If you're at peace, you get your war exhaustion down more quickly. So you see, this electronics factory is about to be done. So here we go. So let's just click this. We'll get to events soon. Electronics, as you can see, are being produced. I make 16. If you want to make income, a lot of income really quickly, I recommend making electronic factories and selling to AI countries. Players will generally not accept these trades unless they're really stupid or new. So as you can see, I'm going to sell to Japan. I want to sell the 16 electronic factories I'm making. You'll be selling for every 5 days for 1.3 million. See, watch my economy explode right now. See, I make 2.1 million now. So yeah, factories are a very good way of getting cash. You see, I make 1.3 million from trade now. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. In fact, if I run out of copper or gold, this will stop working. I'll show you that right now. If I just sell all of this. See, if I run out of copper now, it'll stop working. So let me just get rid of this copper, and I should my factory turn red. Get ready for that. Yep, now it's under supply of copper, so now it doesn't produce any electronics, and now I'm losing electronics. And once I run out of electronics, the trade will cancel. So that's useful and very good to keep in mind. So, yeah, mechanics can be complicated. I understand that. Keep in mind policies. They give you certain buffs, and they can also give you debuffs, like tax income, -5, but also +5 stability. That's the Welfare Act. Military Service Tax is a really good policy. It lowers your military upkeep and increases your manpower increase, which is shown right here. I make 2,500 manpower. All you have to do is hover over the manpower, and it'll show you how much you're making. As you see, our trade with Japan canceled because we ran out of electronics. Here's an event. So I have 167 million, and this gives me 200 research power if I spend 44 million. Generally, I don't usually accept this, but since I have enough money and it's cheap, I will grant funding. And see, we get Monument 2. It's 100 million. It gives us 5, and you can construct it. Now I have this. The National Monument will stay in your country for the rest of the server's life. It gives you 5 stability and 10% unrest reduction, plus 10% unrest reduction, which is a mechanic that if you take over a city, you'll have unrest in that city, and it gets reduced after you annex the country, and eventually you have a core, core cities produce more cash. So keep that in mind. Technology, very important. Here you have research spending, and technology is very important. This is research speed. You upgrade your research speed so you get more research. And you can see this tax income. It gives you up to 75% tax income. Factory output, a lot more factory output. Infantry research improves your infantry's attack and defense. Political, obviously, stability, political power gain, stuff like that. I make 2 political power. If I research this, it'll give me more political power. I think that's everything for mechanics. Keep in mind, if you turn up your research spending, you will make more research power, and you click these to up your research. This will up my research output. As you can see, it's going up. So now I make more research. Keep in mind that government spending and research spending both cost a lot of money. Research spending generally costs more than government spending, but they both will cost a good amount of money. But they're generally worth it, especially if you're a weak nation. So keep that in mind. Next thing I will be talking about is army composition. So this is important because if you're a new player, you might not know what all these units do. Infantry, pretty basic, takes over cities. Does a lot of things. It takes over cities. It can fight over units. Very important. It's usually going to be the main fighting force in your army, although you might also have tanks. Next is just tanks themselves. Tanks do more damage than infantry. They're usually better early game. Better early game. Terrible late game. Infantry's better late game. Never use tanks at late game unless there's a new update or something that modifies them. Because there's a little thing I like to call anti-tank, which makes tanks completely obsolete late game. So keep that in mind. Next is anti-aircraft. Pretty basic. Just shoots down aircraft. No other use for them. Artillery bombards. This is a very good unit. Bombards other people's troops. This is one of the most important units, actually. It's insane how overpowered this is. Very good for defensive wars. You should try and get this. It's extremely good. So, yeah, artillery is good. It's very expensive to spawn, though. $12 million just to make 50 artillery. So, yeah. What I recommend for your army composition is usually just have infantry late game. Tanks early game, depending on what country you are. It's still fine to have infantry early game, but tanks are definitely better early game. So if you can get tanks, then I would recommend getting tanks. But if you can't, then just make infantry. Your composition should be mostly infantry, but so it can be mostly tanks if you have a lot of money. So keep that in mind, because tanks cost a lot more money than infantry. 160,000 upkeep compared to 20,000. It's way more expensive. But yeah, so there you go. Also, conscription. This is important because it gives you more manpower. It depending on what you are. If you're one of like China or the U.S., I would not recommend using this. But if you're like a European nation, always go unlimited as quickly as possible. One of the best conscription laws, in my opinion. The volunteer is okay, but limited, you want to get to limited as quickly as possible. It does hurt your tax income and some other things, but it gives you more than double the manpower. So always go for limited conscription when you can. Do not go past that though. These are both trash. I never take any of it. I never take extensive or required. So keep that in mind. Leaders, they give buffs to your troops, and they can also get debuffs depending on. So you see, -9 defense, more movement. He sucks. Do not take. I wouldn't recommend taking a leader with negative defense. I'd always take a leader with more defense or attack, or sometimes even movement or XP bonus. But it's up to you what kind of general you want. Doctrines, all these 2 different things. I usually stay on balance for my army doctrine. And I doesn't really matter what naval doctrine or air doctrine you choose, whatever you prefer. Aerial, I do usually go air supremacy, and for naval, I usually go capital, but it's all up to you on that. I think that's about it for army. This is not too hard to learn. If you want to make a bunch of units, control, hover over all the cities, boom. control, click, make more units. As you can see, boom, I just made a bunch of infantry. There you go, made 2 million infantry. So that's how the army works. I also just told you how to select multiple cities. So there you go. That's how you. That's the army composition. So yep, that's all you really need to know about army for now. Okay, so now we're moving on to Air Force and Navy. Air Force and Navy are a little more complicated, but not much more. So, first, Air Force, you can only make planes in airports, at airports. So you can't make them in multiple cities, you can only make them in airports. And you can build new ones, but the population has to be above 500,000, I think? Yes, 500,000. Has to be above 500,000. So, 500,000 population in both airport. Every country has an airport at their capital, even if it's less than 500,000, like frickin' Malta here. So that's also good to know. So if you're at war with a small country and their capital has an airport, if you tear it down, they might not be able to get it back depending on the population of the city. So keep that in mind. So usually make a good amount of fighters and attackers. I almost never use bombers, but they can be good. I don't like using them. They cost a lot of money and they use lots of fuel. Fighters are good for destroying other fighters. Other fighters and attackers and bombers. They secure air superiority. Attackers destroy ground units. Bombers bomb cities. So that's all good to know. So I'd recommend a little more fighters than attackers, and I don't usually use bombers, but if you do, I'd have just a few bombers, not too many, because they cost a lot of money and they use a lot of fuel. So I'd say mostly fighters with a good amount of attackers and a few bombers. For Navy, the meta is always aircraft carriers, and it will probably stay that way. Very good for naval invasions. If you're invading Germany and you're the UK, the aircraft carriers are really good for that. They cost huge amounts of money, though, and our upkeep is insane. But battleships are good for destroying other ships. Submarines kill aircraft carriers and battleships, so submarines can destroy aircraft carriers and battleships. Destroyers and frigates kill submarines. So if you just have a stack of battleships, they can get killed by a submarine. But if you stack with battleships and destroyers, it will kill the submarine. So keep that in mind. That's why you need escort ships. Also, your troops can get sunk by enemy ships if you have nothing escorting them. So I recommend a good escort fleet with maybe a few battleships if you have a bunch of infantry just going across the ocean. That's pretty basic overview. Obviously, doctrines depends on what you want. If you want submarines, submarine warfare. If you want aircraft carriers, capital fleet. If you want fighters, air supremacy. It just depends on what you're going for, what type of build you're going for. So yeah, that's really all you need to know right now. Very basic overview of the Navy and Air Force. You can learn it more as time goes on. So yeah.